I saw my business associate turn $10,000 into $12 billion over 60 years. I watched him achieve that without relying on luck, insider tips, or any genius moves that you or I couldn't do ourselves. Over those same 60 years, I observed countless smart, diligent, and educated folks make more cash than we did in any one year, yet end up with almost nothing. Doctors pulling in $500,000 a year who ended up broke upon retirement. Lawyers charging $400 an hour who passed away in debt. Engineers, executives, entrepreneurs, people way sharper than I am in their particular fields, who amassed nothing despite years of high earnings. The key difference wasn't about being smart. It wasn't about how hard they worked. It boiled down to a few choices they made regarding where to invest their money. More specifically, it was 7 types of investments they channeled their wealth into that I completely steered clear of. Not because I was exceptionally smart, but because I had observed the math, delved into the history, and seen enough folks lose their hard-earned cash to spot a trend. What I'm about to share isn't just a theory, it's not a guess. It's based on 7 decades of watching money shift from one hand to another and noticing which hands always seemed to run dry while others kept growing steadily. These 7 types of investments wiped out more wealth among people I knew than market downturns, bad luck, and poor timing all put together. The sad part is that most of them were just following the usual advice, doing exactly what financial experts, their parents, and society told them was the smart, safe, and responsible thing to do. The first wealth destroyer I managed to steer clear of my whole life was something that 90% of Americans eagerly bought. Something that financial advisors built entire careers around selling. Something that had the word investment right in its title, even though it turned out to be one of the worst investments ever made. Complete life insurance, universal life, variable life, and every twist on permanent life insurance that claimed to merge protection with investment growth. The sales pitch was enticing. They'd say you need life insurance anyway, so why not grab a policy that accumulates cash value you can borrow from or take out during retirement? You're not just securing coverage, you're creating an asset. Tax-free growth, guaranteed returns, the security of insurance mixed with the potential of investments. It all seemed flawless, but it was a mathematical trap. Here's what they never made clear. When you purchase whole life insurance, about 50 to 100% of your initial year's premiums go straight to the agent as commission, not into your cash value, but into their wallet. You pay $5,000, they pocket $5,000. You receive insurance coverage and practically nothing in your cash value account. Over the next 10 years, the insurance company gradually and reluctantly starts putting some of your payments into this so-called investment account after taking out costs for insurance, admin fees, mortality charges, and profit margins. By the time you hit year 15 or 20, if you're fortunate and haven't given up on the policy out of sheer annoyance, you might see a cash value that matches what you've put in. Those returns they promised, like 4%, 5%, or sometimes even more, weren't actually on your total payments. They were based on the cash value after all those deductions. I saw a buddy of mine pay $5,000 every year into a whole life policy from the age of 30 to 60. That's 30 years, totaling $150,000 in premiums. When he turned 60, his cash value was $168,000. That's just $18,000 in growth over 30 years, which breaks down to a 0.4% annual return. If he had opted for $20 a month in term insurance for the same death benefit and invested the difference, $4,760 a year, into the stock market, averaging 10%, he would have ended up with $870,000. The gap between $168,000 and $870,000 is $702,000. That's what whole life insurance ended up costing him not just in fees, but in the missed opportunities for wealth he could have accumulated, but didn't, all because someone convinced him that insurance and investment should be bundled together. They really shouldn't be. Insurance is meant for managing risk, while investment is all about growing wealth. Merging the two is like getting a car that also functions as a boat. It does both jobs poorly, costs more than purchasing each one separately, and the salesperson rakes in a huge profit from selling it to you. I never opted for permanent life insurance. Instead, I went for affordable term insurance when my kids were little and I had responsibilities. Once I had built enough wealth so that my passing wouldn't financially ruin my family, I let it go. The money I saved by not investing in whole life insurance grew in businesses and stocks over 50 years. That single choice likely added 8 figures to my net worth. Not because I was particularly clever, but because I realized that when someone's paycheck relies on you making a purchase, their advice on whether you should buy it is pretty much useless. The entire life insurance sector is based on a clever deception. It starts with people's genuine desire for security, then throw in some complicated terms and phrases that they don't really get. Offer hefty commissions to salespeople to promote products that aren't necessary, all dressed up in the language of being financially responsible. Taking care of your loved ones, securing your future, acting like an adult. It's truly brilliant. They managed to take one of the worst investment options ever and convinced a whole generation that it was a smart choice. I witnessed a friend, the same one who built up $168,000 in cash value over 3 decades, defend his whole life policy, even after I laid out the numbers for him. He had been shelling out premiums for 25 years when we talked about this. I posed a straightforward question to him. If you could rewind to your 30s, with all the knowledge you have now, would you choose to purchase this policy again? He pondered for a while. No, he confessed, definitely not. So I asked, why do you keep paying those premiums now? Since I've already put in so much, he mentioned. I can't just turn my back on 25 years of payments. That's when I realized the insurance company had come out on top. They had persuaded him that sticking with a poor investment was somehow preferable to acknowledging he had made a mistake and shifting his funds to something that genuinely created wealth. It's the sunk cost fallacy at its finest, and it keeps folks stuck in wealth-eroding products for years on end. The insurance agent who sold him that policy raked in $50,000 in commissions throughout the policy's duration. My buddy saw just $18,000 in growth. The insurance company pocketed hundreds of thousands in profit. Everyone profited except the individual who truly needed to accumulate wealth. That's not an investment. That's a transfer of wealth from those who aren't financially savvy to those who are financially predatory. The second type of investment I steered clear of was something that many people based their retirement dreams on. Here's a rephrased version of the text you provided, something that society has long viewed as the cornerstone of financial stability. It's a mix of significant leverage, illiquid assets, and transaction fees that would make a loan shark turn red. I'm talking about real estate, but not your main home. I'll tackle that topic later. What I mean is investment real estate, rental units, vacation spots you convince yourself are investments, commercial properties, and real estate investment trusts. The whole belief system around owning property is about building wealth. The sales pitch was even more enticing than life insurance because it was wrapped up in the American dream. Buy property, see it increase in value, collect rent, build equity, use other people's money through mortgages, and retire wealthy. I've heard it countless times. I've seen hundreds of folks take that route, and with very few exceptions, those who purchased large amounts of property in booming areas and held onto them through various market cycles ended up losing wealth compared to simply owning businesses through stocks. Here's the math that often gets overlooked when folks are trying to sell you real estate. First up, we have transaction costs. When you purchase a property, you're looking at closing costs that usually range from 3 to 5%. And when it's time to sell, you'll be paying realtor fees, which typically average around 6%. So if you buy a property worth $500,000, you could be out of pocket by $15,000 to $30,000 just in transaction costs before you've even seen a dime from rent or appreciation. Now, let's compare that to buying stocks. With modern brokerages, you're looking at zero transaction costs. Next, let's talk about carrying costs. Property taxes in most states hover around 1 to 2% of the property's value each year. Homeowners insurance adds another 1% to that. Maintenance can also take a bite, averaging 1 to 2% annually, and that's assuming nothing major goes wrong. So you're shelling out 3 to 5% of the property's value every year just to keep it. For a property valued at $500,000, that means you're spending between $15,000 to $25,000 each year on taxes, insurance, and maintenance. And that's not even counting mortgage interest if you're using leverage. Lastly, let's consider illiquidity. When I decide to sell a stock, I just click a button and have cash in my account within 2 days. When you're looking to sell a piece of property, you put it on the market, wait for someone interested, negotiate a deal, go through the escrow process, and if luck is on your side, you might see cash in your hands within 90 days. But if things don't go your way, like bad timing or an economic slump, you could end up waiting for years or selling at a loss. Then there's the issue of depreciation and becoming outdated. Properties age over time, roofs need to be replaced, and HVAC systems eventually fail. Neighborhoods can change, too. On the other hand, the businesses I own through stocks don't have leaky roofs, tenants who stop paying rent, or foundations that crack. They just keep generating earnings that grow over time. And let's talk about leverage. It can be a double-edged sword. Everyone loves to brag about using mortgage leverage to control $1 million property with just $200,000 down. What they often overlook is that if the property's value drops by 20%, you're not just losing 20%, you're actually losing everything. Your $200,000 in equity can vanish completely. I saw this unfold with some really smart folks back in 2008. Doctors, lawyers, engineers who had built up millions in home equity and rental properties, all leveraged, all convinced that real estate only goes up. They ended up losing it all, not because they were foolish, but because they didn't grasp that leverage can amplify losses just as much as it boosts profits. Back in 1965, I crunched the numbers and the results were evident. Over extended periods, stocks consistently outperformed real estate by about 2 to 3 percentage points each year. That may not seem like a lot at first glance, but over 4 decades, it translates into $1 turning into 15 or 45. That's the divide between a secure retirement and building wealth for future generations. Yet everyone gravitated towards real estate since they could see it, touch it, and drive by it. They just couldn't visualize owning a piece of a business, so they invested in properties and spent their weekends fixing up toilets and managing tenants. Meanwhile, I opted for stocks and dedicated my weekends to reading. Fast forward 40 years, and I ended up with more wealth than time. They had properties that rose in value roughly in line with inflation, and a treasure trove of memories dealing with difficult renters. Now, let me clarify what I'm not implying. I'm not suggesting that owning a home is a bad idea. I'm not saying that real estate doesn't have a spot in a portfolio. What I'm getting at is that for a lot of folks, investing in property is more of a trap dressed up as a chance. It plays into our craving for physical assets, our belief that we can keep an eye on and manage our investments, and our cultural stories about owning property. but the numbers can be harsh. A buddy of mine picked up 3 rental homes back in the 1990s. He shelled out around $200,000 each, totaling $600,000. He spent 2 decades managing them, handling repairs, evictions, property taxes, and insurance claims. He sold them in 2015 for about $350,000 each, which adds up to roughly $1 million. Sounds like a success, right? He more than doubled his investment. But when you take into account all the ongoing costs, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, empty periods, and property management, if he brought in help, his real return was closer to 4% a year. And that doesn't even include the countless hours he spent tackling tenant problems, emergency repairs, and all the administrative headaches. If he had taken that same $600,000 and invested it in an S&P 500 index fund, he would have ended up with around $2.4 million by 2015, without spending any time managing it or dealing with late-night calls about broken water heaters. The gap between $1 million and $2.4 million is $1.4 million, plus the 20 years he spent as a landlord instead of pursuing literally anything else. That's the opportunity cost that most people overlook when they decide to buy rental properties. The third type of investment I steered clear of was something even more culturally revered than real estate. It's something that people have literally fought over for thousands of years. It's meant to be the ultimate safe haven for value and a shield against disaster. I'm talking about gold, silver, precious metals, and commodities that don't produce anything, don't generate cash flow, and just sit in a vault somewhere while you cross your fingers, hoping someone will pay you more for them tomorrow than you did today. This could be the most illogical investment ever made by humans. I've spent 4 decades observing smart folks invest their money into gold for reasons that fall apart with just a bit of logical thinking. Here's the case for gold. It's been seen as valuable for 5,000 years. It's supposed to protect against inflation. It's a safe haven when paper currency loses its value. It's something you can hold, and it's limited in supply. Governments can't just print more of it. While all of that is technically accurate, it's also totally irrelevant when it comes to actually building wealth. Let me break down the real numbers behind owning gold. From 1975 to 2023, which is 48 years, the price of gold went from around $165 an ounce to about $2,000 an ounce. That's roughly 12 times your investment, which sounds great until you stack it up against any productive asset. During that same time frame, the stock market investment number 3, gold and precious metals, increased by about 90 times. $1 put into stocks in 1975 turned into $90. Meanwhile, $1 invested in gold only grew to $12. And it gets even worse because gold comes with its own carrying costs. If you decide to purchase physical gold, you have to find a secure place to keep it. Keeping it at home puts you at risk of theft. If you opt for a safe deposit box or a vault service, you'll end up paying yearly fees. On the other hand, if you invest in gold through an exchange-traded fund, you'll incur management fees. So that 12 times return might shrink down to around 10 times after accounting for those costs. Meanwhile, stocks have been dishing out dividends that compound over those 48 years. This could turn that 90 times return into something closer to 150 times if you reinvest those dividends. The difference between gold and stocks isn't just significant, it's the contrast between generational wealth and modest gains. However, folks don't buy gold for the returns. They purchase it for security, as a hedge against crises, and because they believe that when everything falls apart, gold will still hold its value. Let me share what really goes down during a crisis. I experienced stagflation in the 1970s, Black Monday in 1987, the dot-com bust, the financial meltdown in 2008, and the pandemic. You know what maintained its value in each of those situations? Owning and running successful companies. These are the businesses that create goods everyone needs, offer services people are looking for, and keep the cash flowing no matter how the market is behaving. During certain crises, gold shot up for a bit, but then it dropped again. Meanwhile, businesses continued to bring in profits. Here's the key issue with gold that many folks overlook. It's not really an investment. It's more like a gamble. Investing means putting your money into something that yields returns. Think of a company that makes money, a bond that earns interest, or real estate that brings in rental income. Gold, on the other hand, just sits there. You buy it, stash it away, and cross your fingers that someone will pay you more for it down the line. That's not what investing is about. It's the greater fool theory in action. You're essentially wagering that someone else will be foolish enough to pay more than you did for something that doesn't produce anything at all. I've never purchased gold, not even a tiny bit. Not as a safeguard, not as a backup, and definitely not as a gamble. Every dollar I might have spent on gold went straight into businesses instead. For more than 70 years, that choice has turned into a gap in wealth so enormous that I can't even figure it out accurately. If I had invested 10% of my total assets in gold back in 1965, which a lot of financial experts suggested, I would be millions poorer today. Millions. And I would have spent 7 decades fretting about whether society was on the brink of collapse instead of diving into annual reports and understanding how businesses operate. The mental toll of owning gold is something that hardly anyone talks about. Gold enthusiasts are the most anxious, gloomy, and consistently let down investors I've ever encountered. They're always on edge, waiting for the downfall, the hyperinflation, the currency crisis that will finally validate their beliefs. Meanwhile, life goes on, companies keep producing, and the stock market continues to grow. I once asked a gold investor what it would take for him to acknowledge that gold was a poor investment. He couldn't provide an answer because for true believers in gold, there's no way to disprove their theory. If gold increases in value, they were correct. If it decreases, it's just a temporary manipulation, and they should grab more. If gold stays flat for many years, it's maintaining its worth while everything else is inflated. It's the ultimate unchallengeable investment argument, which means it's not really an investment argument at all. It's more like a belief system, and like most belief systems, it gives people a sense of security without actually enhancing their financial situation. The fourth type of investment I steered clear of was something that mixed the worst aspects of whole life insurance and real estate. It had high fees, was hard to cash out, offered poor returns, and had a level of complexity that hid how bad the deal truly was. Actively managed mutual funds, hedge funds, private equity funds, any investment option where you pay someone else, typically 1 to 2% each year, plus extra fees based on performance, to handle your money for you. This could be the most profitable con in financial history, and it thrived for decades because it tapped into a basic human flaw. The idea that professionals can achieve what we can't and that it's worth shelling out for better returns is something I want to challenge with some numbers. Typically, an actively managed mutual fund will hit you with around 1.3% in annual fees. At first glance, that doesn't seem like a lot. You might hardly notice it when you check your quarterly statement. However, over a span of 30 years, that 1.3% fee can eat away at roughly 35% of your total returns. And I'm not talking about 35% of your fees. I mean 35% of your entire wealth. If the market is giving you a 10% return each year and you're paying 1.3% in fees, you're not really pocketing 8.7%. Thanks to compounding, you're actually looking at around 6.5%. And that's if your fund manager can keep up with the market returns before fees, which, let's be honest, 95% of them fail to do over the long haul. The statistics are pretty harsh for the active management scene. When you look at 15-year spans, about 92% of active fund managers lag behind their benchmark index after fees. Stretch that out to 20 years, and it jumps to 95%. And over 30 years, it's nearly 98%. So what this means is that if you choose a fund that's actively managed, your chances of outperforming a basic index fund that only charges a tiny fee of 0.03% and doesn't need any special knowledge to invest in are just 2%. Those aren't great odds. It's pretty much a guarantee that you'll underperform. Yet the mutual fund sector is a massive $3 trillion industry. They're really skilled at convincing you to overlook the facts. They highlight the funds that have outperformed the market while conveniently ignoring the survivorship bias. They don't mention the countless funds that shut down because they did so poorly. They focus on past performance, disregarding the fact that what happened before doesn't mean it will happen again. They hype up the skills of their managers, overlooking that even brilliance can't make up for a 1.3% annual drag plus underperformance. I remember seeing my coworkers pour money into hedge funds back in the 80s and 90s when hedge funds were all the rage. They charged a 2% annual management fee along with 20% of any profits over a certain limit. The idea was that these managers were incredibly talented, super connected, and really sharp, to the point where they could pull in returns that would overshadow the market even after those hefty fees. A few managed to do that for a bit. Most, however, never did. And even the ones that saw impressive returns experienced something odd. As they expanded and brought in more money, their returns started to revert to the average. Their advantage faded away. But the fees, they stayed put. I met a hedge fund manager back in 2003 who was pulling in 30% annual returns for 5 years. Smart guy. Graduated from Wharton, worked at Goldman Sachs, and had this unique trading system he developed. He was handling around $50 million. I asked him what he thought would happen to his returns if he had $5 billion to manage instead. He went silent for a moment. Then he confessed that his strategy just wouldn't work on that scale. His edge in actively managed funds was only effective in small, inefficient areas of the market that couldn't handle big capital movements. If he had $5 billion, he would need to invest in a different way, and his returns might drop to around 15% or even lower. However, he would still take 2 and 20 on that $5 billion, which meant he would personally earn over $100 million each year, even if his investors only saw 12 or 13% after fees. That's when it hit me that the hedge fund game wasn't really about making investors wealthy. It was all about lining the pockets of hedge fund managers. The way they set things up was fantastic for them, but pretty rough for the investors. They got paid based on the assets they managed and their performance during good years, but they didn't return any money during bad years. It was a win for them no matter what, while investors were left holding the bag. I never put a single dollar into a hedge fund. I didn't buy an actively managed mutual fund once index funds came onto the scene. Every dollar I could have handed over to a so-called expert manager went into low-cost index funds or individual stocks that I looked into myself. Over the course of 40 years, the difference was likely $50 million or more in my personal net worth, not because I was more clever than hedge fund managers, but because I wasn't shelling out 1 to 2% each year for them to underperform what I could achieve for just 0.03%. The math behind fees is the key idea in investing that no one ever talks about. If you've got $1 million invested and you're paying 1.3% in fees every year, after 30 years with a 10% market return, you'll end up with around $13 million. But if you put that same million into an index fund that charges just 0.03%, you'll see about $20 million. That's a $7 million gap due to that 1.3%. That's not just a small mistake. That's wealth that could have been passed down to future generations, but instead, it's going to the financial services industry. And folks are okay with it because they don't realize that compounding affects both sides. It boosts your returns, and it also increases your fees. The industry is well aware of this. That's why they draw your focus to performance and hide the fee details. That's why they showcase returns before fees in their promotional materials. That's why they make fee structures complicated and tough to compare. They're not out to make you wealthy. Their goal is to squeeze out the highest fees while delivering the least value possible. And they've been pulling this off for 70 years. The fifth investment I steered clear of was something that didn't even exist for most of my career, but then it took off in the 2000s and turned into the major speculative craze of the 21st century. Cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, or whatever new coin was being hyped this week is supposedly the future of money. I observed this unfold with a mix of intrigue and dread because it encapsulated every aspect of financial illusion I had witnessed over 7 decades. The tulip craze, the South Sea bubble, the dot-com bust. The notion that this time it's different, that economic principles don't apply, that you can strike it rich without creating anything of real worth. Let me be crystal clear about my stance on cryptocurrency. It's not a currency since no one actually uses it to purchase goods. It's not a reliable store of value because its price swings dramatically. It's not a productive asset since it doesn't bring in any cash flow. It's not a commodity either because it lacks any industrial application. It's a digital token whose only worth is determined by what someone else is willing to pay for it, making it the ultimate example of greater fool speculation ever devised. The justifications for cryptocurrency crumble under even the slightest examination. First off, there's the scarcity claim. They argue that Bitcoin is capped at 21 million coins, which supposedly gives it intrinsic value. But scarcity alone doesn't create value. It's usefulness that generates value. I could whip up a limited digital asset right now. There will only ever be 21 million Mer coins in circulation. Does that make them valuable? Absolutely not. It's the combination of scarcity and demand that creates value, and the only demand for cryptocurrency is purely speculative. People purchase it with the hope that someone will pay more for it tomorrow. That's not value, that's just musical shares. Next, there's the decentralization argument. They claim that cryptocurrency is free from government oversight, which supposedly makes it better than fiat currency. Putting aside the fact that a lot of cryptocurrency trades go through centralized platforms that are subject to government oversight, let me pose a straightforward question. Why is it important to have freedom from government interference? The typical response from crypto fans is that governments weaken currency through inflation, and that's certainly a point. However, the solution they're suggesting, a currency that appreciates in value over time, brings about its own significant challenges. If holding on to your currency makes it more valuable, then nobody actually spends it. This leads to a standstill in economic activity. We've seen this play out in the past. The gold standard caused deflationary cycles that resulted in economic downturns. That's the reason all developed nations shifted to fiat currency, not because governments craved control, but because deflationary currencies fail as means of exchange. Lastly, let's consider the blockchain tech argument. Even if cryptocurrency doesn't succeed, they claim that blockchain technology will transform everything. Perhaps you don't have to own Bitcoin to take advantage of blockchain technology, just like you didn't need to have shares in pets.com to enjoy the benefits of the internet. Most groundbreaking technologies don't necessarily make their initial investors wealthy. Instead, they enhance the lives of users and generate value in surprising ways. The internet didn't turn most of its investors into millionaires. It created giants like Amazon, Google, and Facebook. In fact, many of those companies weren't even around during the internet boom. I saw Bitcoin rise from 1,000 to 20,000, then drop to 3,000, climb back to 60,000, and fall to 20,000 again. Each surge brought in fresh investors, all thinking they had discovered the key to effortless riches. Each downturn wiped out those investors and paved the way for the next surge. It's a never-ending cycle of greed and fear. The only ones who consistently come out ahead are the early adopters who got in at rock-bottom prices and the exchanges that rake in fees on every trade. I've never invested in cryptocurrency, not a single dollar. Not as a gamble, not as a safeguard against government money, and not because I believed I grasped the tech. Every reason I came across for why I should invest in it sounded just like the reasons I heard back in 1999 for why I should put my money into pets.com, Webvan, and e-toys, revolutionary tech, first mover advantage, network effects. Sure, all of that was spot on regarding the technology, but it had nothing to do with the actual returns on investment. Those companies went belly up while the tech itself flourished. The same scenario is likely to unfold with cryptocurrency. Some form of blockchain tech will probably evolve into the infrastructure we all rely on without even realizing it, much like TCP/IP protocols. Meanwhile, those who bought Bitcoin at $50,000 will have seen most of their cash vanish because technological revolutions and investment returns are two different beasts. Amazing technology often leads to poor investments. Investment number 5, cryptocurrency investments. The ideal moment to put your money into a tech venture isn't when it's all the rage and everyone's buzzing about it. It's actually when it's dull, making money and generating cash flow. Back in 1999, Amazon wasn't a smart investment when it was the talk of the town. It became a solid choice in 2003 after it took a nosedive, figured out its business strategy, and began raking in steady profits. Cryptocurrency doesn't have a clear route to making money because it's not a real business. It's just a speculative token, and those kinds of tokens eventually drop back to their true worth, which, in the case of something that doesn't produce anything or serve any real purpose, is pretty much nothing. Folks get upset when I mention this. They say I don't get the tech, that I'm just an old-timer afraid of change, that I've let a once-in-a-lifetime chance slip by, maybe. But I've been hearing that I don't grasp the next big thing for 70 years, and I've seen the people who insist they do lose a ton of money. Sure, here's a reformulated version of the text. All right, I built my fortune through straightforward businesses that created goods and brought in profits. I'd choose that deal every single time. The 6th type of investment I steered clear of was something that, ironically, was quite trendy among folks who thought of themselves as savvy investors, those who had read the right literature, grasped the theories, and aimed to fine-tune their earnings with scientific accuracy. We're talking about individual bonds, corporate bonds, municipal bonds, treasury bonds, any fixed income security where you lend cash to an organization in return for a guaranteed interest rate. At first glance, bonds appear to be the safest and most logical investment out there. You know precisely what you'll earn and when you'll receive it. No ups and downs, no surprises, just consistent and reliable returns. However, the catch is that those consistent returns can actually lead to a steady decline in wealth once you take inflation and taxes into account. Let me break down the numbers for you. A 10-year Treasury bond right now gives you about 4%. Sounds fair enough, but inflation is sitting at around 3% every year. So when you factor that in, your actual return after inflation drops to 1%. Then there are taxes. If you fall into the 37% tax bracket, which many high earners do, you end up handing over 1.48% of that 4% to the government, leaving you with just 2.52%. Now, if you take away 3% inflation from that 2.52% nominal return, your real after-tax return turns out to be negative 0.48%. That's right, you're losing purchasing power. You're gradually getting poorer, and it's pretty predictable. But hey, bonds are safe, right? People often say you'll get your principal back. That's true if you're just looking at the numbers, but totally misleading when you look at it in real terms. If you throw $100,000 into bonds that yield 4% over 30 years, you'll get your $100,000 back along with your interest. But that $100,000 won't buy what about $41,000 can today. After factoring in 3% annual inflation, you've preserved your nominal cash, yet you've lost 59% of your purchasing power. That's not really safety. That's a sure way to end up poorer. The only time bonds actually made sense as an investment was when interest rates were higher than inflation plus taxes. This took place in the early 1980s when Paul Volcker hiked interest rates to tackle inflation. And you could snag treasury bonds that were paying out 15% while inflation was sitting at 10%. A real return of 5% seemed pretty appealing, but honestly, those circumstances were only around for about 5 years out of the last 50. For the rest of the time, bonds turned out to be tools for losing wealth, all dressed up as safe investments. I saw friends in the 90s and 2000s putting together bond portfolios because their financial advisors told them that at their age, they should prioritize safety and predictability. Those friends ended up retiring with portfolios that brought in $50,000 or $60,000 a year from bonds. It sounds cozy until you realize that $50,000 now buys what $25,000 did when they retired. Their income stayed the same, while their living expenses doubled. Meanwhile, I kept all of my investable assets in stocks. Productive companies that raise prices with inflation, boost earnings, and increase dividends. My retirement income grew by 8 to 10% each year. Not because I was taking on more risk, but because I realized that the most secure long-term investment is having ownership in productive assets, rather than lending money to borrowers at fixed rates. The bond market, similar to the insurance sector and the mutual fund world, mainly serves to shift wealth from less experienced investors to financial middlemen. When you purchase a bond through a broker, you end up paying a spread, which is the difference between what the broker originally paid for the bond and the price they sell it to you. That spread usually ranges from 1 to 3% of the bond's value, which on a bond that yields 4% means you just handed over the first year's interest to your broker. Then you have to pay taxes on that interest every year. Plus, inflation chips away at the purchasing power of your principal. After accounting for all those expenses, you're fortunate if you even break even in real terms. However, bonds seem safe because their value doesn't swing around like stocks do. This is the biggest psychological trick in finance. Getting folks to believe that nominal stability equals real safety can be tricky. A stock portfolio might take a nosedive of 30% in a rough year, but over 3 decades it could grow at a rate of 8 to 10%. On the flip side, a bond portfolio might never see a drop in its nominal value, yet over 30 years it could lose 2 to 3% each year due to inflation and taxes. So, which one is genuinely safe? The one that actually increased your wealth, or the one that seems stable while draining your finances? I never put more than a small portion of my wealth into bonds. That was just for liquidity, keeping cash on hand for opportunities without needing to sell stocks during unfavorable times. Every dollar I didn't invest in bonds went straight into stocks instead. Over 50 years, that decision likely made a difference of $30 to $40 million in my net worth. Not because stocks are some kind of magic, but because bonds are mathematically destined to lag behind inflation-adjusted stock returns over extended periods. I realized that feeling secure is not the same as being secure. The only way to ensure financial security is by having productive assets that appreciate in value quicker than inflation. Bonds don't achieve that. Investing in bonds is essentially wagering that the future will be less favorable than the past, that economic growth will decelerate, and that companies will halt their innovation. It's a deeply pessimistic approach to investing, and pessimism comes with a hefty price tag. On the other hand, optimism, the belief that human creativity will keep generating value, has been the only sensible investment philosophy throughout human history. I opted for optimism. I went for businesses. I invested in stocks. As a result, I found myself significantly wealthier than those who prioritized safety, predictability, and bonds. The seventh and final type of investment I steered clear of was probably the hardest to resist emotionally because it wasn't even pitched as an investment. It was presented as a lifestyle choice, a mark of success, a reward you earned after years of hard work. Brand new cars, luxury vehicles, cars that lose value the instant you drive them off the lot. This may come off as an odd inclusion for investment number 6, individual bonds, but that's exactly the idea. Folks often see cars as investments. They take out loans, trade them in, and upgrade, even though they're really one of the worst financial moves you can make. Let me break down the actual cost of a brand new car. The typical new car in the United States runs around $48,000. Most people finance it over a span of 5 or 6 years at an interest rate between 5 and 7%. By the time you've settled the loan, you're looking at paying around $54,000 to $57,000 when you include interest. But that's not the true cost. The real expense is the opportunity cost. Think about what that money could have turned into if you had invested it rather than throwing it at a depreciating item. If you put that $48,000 into an investment, earning 10% annually, it could grow to $124,000 in 10 years, $314,000 in 20 years, and $815,000 in 30 years. That's not just a minor detail. That's what retirement security looks like. That's funding your children's education. That's achieving financial freedom. You end up spending it on a vehicle that might be worth around $15,000 after a decade. But folks don't really see it that way because cars are seen as a necessity. Plus, new cars seem like the sensible option. You need dependable transportation. New cars don't break down as often. You get that warranty. Older cars can rack up maintenance costs. Each of those points is just a way to justify the choice while overlooking the numbers. If I were starting fresh today with nothing, here's my game plan. I'd grab term life insurance if I had dependents and steer clear of any permanent insurance. I'd either rent a simple place or buy a small house that I could pay off quickly, and I'd invest every dollar I didn't put into real estate into index funds. I wouldn't buy any gold, cryptocurrency, or individual bonds. I'd focus on the lowest cost index funds out there, probably a total market index fund, and just hold on to it. I'd get a dependable used car and keep it until it couldn't run anymore. Then I'd get another reliable used car. I'd steer clear of any financial advisor who takes a cut based on the assets they manage. I would dive into yearly reports and figure out how companies operate instead of tuning into financial news. I'd only spend cash on things that actually add value, like education, health, relationships, and tools that boost my earning potential. I'd stash away at least half of my income after taxes, and I'd stick to this plan for 30 years without straying. The outcome would be financial freedom by my 50s and wealth by my 60s, no matter what my starting salary was, no matter if I got lucky, and no matter how the market was doing. That's because the power of compound interest is unbeatable. An 8% return each year doubles your money every 9 years. Over 30 years, that's 3 times it doubles. A single dollar turns into $8. 100,000 becomes 800,000. 500,000 grows to 4 million. The only thing that matters is whether you can dodge the 7 wealth destroyers long enough to let compounding do its magic. Most folks can't manage it. They end up buying whole life insurance in their 30s. They invest in real estate in their 40s. They freak out and buy gold during a crisis. They pay mutual fund fees for years on end. They ponder over digital currencies. They seek refuge in bonds for security. They purchase new vehicles every 5 years, and they end up retiring at 65 with less than they could have had if they had just invested in an index fund at 25 and left it alone. That's the real tragedy. The answer is straightforward, free, accessible to all, and doesn't need any special skills or knowledge. However, it demands the one thing that most folks struggle to maintain: the ability to disregard traditional beliefs, withstand societal pressure, postpone immediate rewards, think long-term, and be consistently unexciting. I spent 70 years being reliably unexciting. I steered clear of the 7 wealth destroyers. I invested in productive assets and kept them for the long haul.